Hello and welcome back. I'm Randy Newbert from VoodooFX. In today's tutorial, we'll be talking about switching. Let's get started. Okay, so here's the few components that you'll be using to make up a switch. The first part is the power source, which in this case it's a 9-volt snap battery fitting. And then we'll need a small piece of wire to hook up onto the switch. And here in this case I have a small piece of ribbon wire, which comes in many forms, but this is the wire setup that you'll need. And then the switch, which in this case is just a small miniature toggle switch, and this one has 2 poles coming out of it, and this will be the switch we'll be using for on and off. And then this will represent the light source. This is a small piece of strip lighting, but this can be considered a circuit board or anything that the power source will be going to turn on or off. So let me get ready and we'll start soldering one of these up and I'll show you how this works. Okay, we're going to start off with one of the most basic setups is we're going to get this switch ready for a little piece of wire. And so we need to be able to wire this up so we can wire it in line with the power source and switch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small piece, and in this case we don't need to worry about color coding because we're just using the positive side of the switch for this application. So what I'm going to do is going to strip off and expose some of the wire here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to twist the leads, the bare wire up here a little bit so I can fit them on here. And in this case, we would usually end up putting a small piece, and I'm going to grab 2 small pieces of shrink tubing, and I'm going to jacket them over and slide them over this area right here. I'm hoping that I'm still within frame here. Let me make sure that I'm get myself good. So there we go. And then what I'm going to do, and you should usually have some very good glasses to do this because it's very hard to thread this small hole. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one side at a time. So what I'm going to do is I just wrap that around there, and I'm going to hold this with the helping hands and mobilize the one side, and then I'm going to pinch the other side. As you can see, my piece of shrink tubing went flying off the other one. So we'll slide that back on, and we're going to get ready to solder. So in this case, we're just going to do it one at a time, and I'm going to put the solder iron on the end. I'm going to put a little dab of the rosin core on there, and that's soldered up. And then I'm going to switch back to the other side. And again, I'm going to thread this very carefully through the hole and come out the other side. And again, put like a little bit of a twist on it just so it stays on. Rehook it back up onto the helping hands, making sure you have your small little pieces of shrink tubing on there. The shrink tubing is always there, so you can cover up the bare ends that you solder. And I'm going to solder that one. That one's done. And then in this case, I'm going to clip off just a little bits of the wire. I don't have to take it all, but I'm just going to clean up the wiring a little bit so it's not all over the place. This one kind of melted on there a little bit, but that's okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slide the shrink tubing up onto the switch housing, and then that's how you want it to look just before you're going to get ready to heat seal it. And this is basically how you make up any kind of switch assembly. And I'm going to go ahead and get my torch, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to very carefully apply a little bit of heat, and that should do it. Okay, and there we go. So those are all closed up. Now, what I want to make this very clear in switching. A lot of people get confused that they think that switching means positive and negative. but it really doesn't. In this case, it's just positive. So regardless of the color coding of the wire, this is going to be power coming up to the switch and power going out to the switch into the light source. So without making this too complicated, so I'm going to pull this aside. Now the switch is made up, I'm going to peel back and recut this 9-volt. And all I'm going to do is take a little off there, take a little off there. I'm going to again twist the wires up. And then once these are all ready, now how I can basically say this, and I'm going to prepare this side too as well, the light source. I'm going to cut those off. I'm going to pull a little bit off here, pull a little off there, clean up my bench here a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to retwist these wires. Try to stay here in frame. And then I'm going to show you how you put together the switch. So now this is going to be the light source. This will be the switch. And again, remember, it's just positive, this switch. There's no negative. It's just plus. So this is where a lot of people always get confused about switching. That's why I'm really need to make this video so people understand what switching and how it works. And I will indicate some diagrams on here so you guys can see actually in a diagram how the switch actually operates. So what the best way I can put this is here's the positive side of the 9-volt snap. So what this is going to do is, again, is when we put these together, so I'm just going to pick one of the wires from the switch and I'm going to wire it because the power is going up to the switch now, and from this one power lead, and it's going all the way up and it's going up into the switch housing. Then the power has to come out of the switch housing, which is the other wire. And this wire will go basically right to the positive side of the power source because there is no other, this is just plus. So if you look, I'm going to wire this together. And when you wire these two together, if you look at it, just even physically look at it, you could see that the switch, you've got three outlets here, three wire setups. So the power goes up, it goes to the switch one side, comes out of the switch and goes to the light source. Now ground just goes together to ground. So this ground wire from the 9 volts is basically, or the power source is just basically grounded right directly to ground. And that is now a completed switching circuit. We've just created right there with having that set up. So again, the positive side of the power comes up to the switch, goes inside the switch, comes out of the switch and to the source or to the light source or circuitry or whatever it's going to be powered with. And then the ground leads come together directly from the main power source and go directly to ground. So if I was to put a battery on this right now, which I'm going to very soon, that's how I will test the switching to make sure that the switching is correct. So when I get to this stage, I basically will bring my helping hands back out and I'm going to solder all 3 of these connection points so I have a good solid connection and I don't worry about not making good connection. I'm just going to put a little on there and that's it. Those are soldered and done. And then what I like to do is, again, whenever you have a bare wire or anything that's open, I'd take a few pieces of this shrink tubing, and actually these ones can be cut down a little bit. So you cut them down a little bit, take a little off the top, slide that on there, slide this one on there, and slide a third one on there just to protect these so we don't have a problem with these touching or connecting that would ground the circuit out. And again, I'm going to heat these up a little bit and close them off. And that's basically, that's a built switch. So that is how a switch is set up. And this can apply for any kind of switching in general, because again, you look at this, you've got the power source here, you have the power disconnect here, which is the switch, and then the light source, and then the ground is grounded back to the circuit. So let me grab a quick little battery. I don't have one handy, but I'll get one. And what I'm going to do is then I'm just going to go ahead and plug it in. And at first, sometimes depending on which way the switch is laid out, which in this case, I think the switch is closed, or I'm sorry, open. So now when you take a look, so right now the switch position is open. So that means that the power cannot jump over the switch. So the second that we hit the switch the other way, the light comes on, because now we have completed the circuit with the plus side, and now the power is being fed back to the light source or to the circuit board, and then can be returned back through the ground. So that's making a complete circuit. It's very basic. Again, I'd like to show a couple of diagrams of this in application. And that is basically how you hook up an on and off switch. I don't really want to go too much farther into it because this is about as basic as it needs to be. And this system works well, and it's worked for me over and over and over. And this can be, again, this can be used in multiple applications. Any kind of switching you do have, or whatever kind of setup that you want to set up for having a remote on and off switch to control your on and off feature. So again, till the next video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thanks again for participating and supporting VoodooFX. We'll see you soon.